So hello you guys and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is another one of my favorite kinds to make. It's another chat interview video. This time it's with the adorable Garret Dillahunt, who plays, of course, played John Dory on Fear the Walking Dead, but has been a part of so many other huge projects. I mean, Raising Hope, Deadwood, Sprung, which is a fantastic show, as well as being in a whole bunch of other films. I mean, his filmography is so wide and varied. He's in Red Right Hand, which is I think it's one of his newer releases, which is a brilliant film. Him and Orlando Bloom, as well as The Dead Don't Hurt with Viggo Mortensen, which I think the trailer just got released yesterday for that. But yeah, Garrett's somebody that I've been a fan of for a long time, and I'm just so incredibly thankful that he agreed to sit down and have this chat, have this talk, go in a little bit in depth into his career, into his thought process and the creative process behind all of his projects. And I don't know, these are my favorite videos to make, and they're, to me, I love hearing people's stories and obviously bringing out the person's love for their art, for their craft, for what they do. And with these long format interviews, you really do get to do that. You get to dive in a bit deeper, talk about things they mightn't get to do normally, or mightn't get to talk about normally. They are hard to secure, these interviews, obviously, because they just are. You know what I mean? It takes a lot of trust for somebody to agree to sit down and speak with someone like me who they mightn't be all that familiar with or aware of. I'm lucky that Garret is aware of what I do and like my channel and the stuff I make. But yeah, I am so happy to be posting this, and I hope you guys enjoy listening along as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. Like I said, like, he's been a part of a lot of projects, yes, but at the same time, like, John Dory was probably one of my favourite aspects of Fear the Walking Dead. Obviously, Fear the Walking Dead is an ensemble cast, so there's a lot of talent going on there, a lot of people involved. But my favourite characters were always John Dory, June, and Strand. And Garret, with this interview, I've completed my trilogy of my 3 favourite characters in Fear the Walking Dead. I've gotten to speak to them, gotten to interview them, which is incredible. And like I said, it does take a lot of trust to on my guest's behalf to come on and sit down and talk. So I'm very grateful that Garret sat and was so graceful with his time to sit and talk and reminisce and share some stories. And yeah, here's my chat with Garret Dillahunt. Well, it's great to finally get to meet you. I feel like it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, have we not met? Why do
No?
I feel I'm doing that thing that usually happens to us. I'm like, yeah, I know you. Did we go to school together? You're like, well, first of all, I could be your daughter. Second of all, no, you just see me on fucking, you know,
No.
reaction videos, which are
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, that's how you know me from probably from the fear
Yeah,
reactions. Yeah.
I watch them all the time. You're great.
Oh, thanks a million, man. That means the
Literally.
world. Not at all
Yeah.
terrifying.
No, I think a lot of us enjoy watching them. We want to see what the fans know, what the fans are gleaning from it or what they think is stupid. It's helpful. And you're funny.
Try to
Quickly.
be. All right. All right, so we'll get started. So before your career really took off, you went to college for, was it journalism?
Yeah, yeah. In high school, I was a big shot on the school newspaper, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. And I did. That is. I went to school, University of Washington, here in Seattle. That's where I'm from, the Pacific Northwest, and studied journalism for a while. And toward the end of my stay there, I was like, well, I should probably write plays too, because it's hard to make a living as a journalist. Like, as though it's super easy to make a living as a playwright.
Mm.
And part of the requirement for that course of study was an acting class. So you ostensibly knew what you were writing for. And that was a terrifying prospect for me because I'm not, a lot of actors are kind of shy people. And I'm kind of a shy person. And I never had any aspirations to do that. But it turned out to be a very therapeutic experience for me, and it got me through some hard times. And I thought I enjoyed this. And there it is. Stuck with it.
And that's how you moved into theatre work then. You did a lot of
Yeah,
stage work, didn't you?
yeah, tons and tons. Uh, this isn't news. I've said it on many a interview and a podcast. My older brother died uh, unexpectedly my senior year of high school. So I was going into my plan with a little discombobulated, a little thrown. I'm sure you've experienced tragedies of your own in one form or another. and it can just the tiniest little thing can knock you way off course. You know what I mean? From where you were planning
Yeah.
to go, and that's I think I don't you know a gift he a consolation prize he might have left is me finding this as a career, which was very which probably saved me, and it's something I really have enjoyed and I've really loved. Um, I didn't answer your question, did I? That was a preamble to your question, and I got distracted.
No, no, not at all. There wasn't really a question. It was just a statement about theater work, or
Yeah, yeah.
stage work.
But yeah, so I threw myself into that. Just I wanted to be somebody else really bad for a long time, so I could be a whole bunch of different people, and I just did it nonstop and did multiple things at once, and you know, it was just a great time. It's great to be young and have all that energy, and but it's still kind of what I do. You know, I get antsy doing one thing and I want to go do other things, or I do more than one job at once. You know, it's a habit I developed that very early on that I should probably break and learn to enjoy some downtime.
I don't think you're the kind of person that could do that. You seem like the kind of person that needs to be busy and constantly doing something.
I think so, you know, and it's working out at this stage. You know,
Yeah,
I,
absolutely. So then it's
I'm
not a
almost
bad thing.
yeah. It's not for me. You
Mm.
know, it's a good thing for me. You know,
But like theater work and stage work, it's very different, obviously, to like TV or film. And with TV, you've been in a lot of projects, actually more than I even realized that I have loved. Like I
mm,
loved the Mindy Project, I loved Raising Hope, obviously Deadwood.
mhm.
You were also in an episode of The X-Files, which I am a little bit late to the game. I started watching The X-Files over the last year, I think it was, and you
Oh,
popped up
wow.
on screen, and it's like, I mean, The X-Files is known for that anyway. Do you know, everyone, well,
Yeah,
most people had an episode or two on that.
yeah.
But with like longer, more lived-in roles, like with the Mindy Project or with John Dory, what draws you to shows specifically, to roles, or to want to take on a project like that?
Well, it's changed over the years because early on, you just I don't know if it's the correct way to go, but it's the way I went. It was just I just wanted to work, you know, and I didn't feel like I had a ton of choices, and I had student loans to pay, and you know I needed to eat, so I auditioned for everything. There was a time that I was almost disappointed when I got the job because I enjoyed booking them so much, you know, and I would think, oh, now I have to actually do it. Oh man, that's going to really cut into my booking time. So stupid. But as time goes on, you know, then you can sort of, you know, choose something that's maybe different than the last thing you did, and you know, I think that's the main difference between theater and film is it's not a surprise to anyone if you do something different than you did last time, or you know, television and film really likes to typecast and really likes to you get a lot of offers to do the thing you just did because oh you did that well come do it for me, and you're like well but I've
Yeah.
done that, you know. So if you want to keep growing and keep stretching, I think you've got to you know keep pushing, keep challenging yourself. And so when I have choices, and I often have choices, I don't have as many choices as we, none of us have as many choices as we would like. But of those choices, I just try to pick the one that sounds the most scary, you know, the one that's the most different than the last thing I did. And I recently told my agents, you know, that a lot of actors, it's called their offer only, meaning they don't audition. You know, I'm not going to come in and read for you. You have to just offer it to me.
Mm.
And I've gotten to a place where I do get a lot of offers, but I suddenly I told my people, you know, don't tell them that. You know, I'm not afraid to audition because that's where you're going to do something different. You know, when you have to convince someone that didn't think of you for that yeah you can actually do it. And I
Mm.
think I think that helps an actor build a more varied and challenging career. You know.
This gone off topic from what I was going to move on to, but in terms of like you said, actually going in and auditioning, what's been I can't imagine. Like you've said that you're shy, and I guess you know yourself better than I would, but I know for me, I'm very shy. I can't imagine walking into a room with a group of strangers when you want something so bad. What was the most nervous you were to read for someone?
I don't remember. And I'm sure people say this to you. They say it to me too. Is you don't seem shy, but
Yeah.
your focus is off yourself right now, and you're in a comfortable space. But you didn't know what you were going to say to me just now. We're having a conversation. Maybe we're two shy people, so we're comfortable. But I
Mm.
kind of feel the same way when I go into the room. I'm not. I don't have improv is fine, and I can do that too. But I'm not myself. And usually I've been given pretty wonderful words by a more skilled writer than I am, so I know what I'm going to say. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not stuttering. I'm not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so it's a little less nerve wracking for me. It was the same in theater. I would be really nervous until the second you set foot on stage, and then suddenly you're home. You know what I mean? You have a story to tell, and you know how to do it. And I I'm less shy than I used to be. I think it's taken many years, and now I'm an old man, and you suddenly realize you belong. You know what I mean? It's like you belong the whole time. You're the only one that didn't think so. And
Experience
it's
as well,
fun.
I guess.
Yeah, it's just experience and you know comfort.
Mm.
Was it nerve wracking when you did your first reaction video? You're like, I'm gonna put this out there so the entire world could see this if they wanted to, or was it completely fine? Because you seem to have no problem, being critical of what you watch or being funny about it, or taking the piss out of what you're seeing, and it's very charming and very you're one of the people I would kind of gauge the success of an episode by, you
Oh,
know.
no fucking way.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people watch your stuff.
Thank you. That does mean so much. It's weird because like when I first started uploading, it's like it didn't really feel like a big deal. It was
Mm,
like, well, yeah, like I got mad into The Walking Dead and then Fear, and it was like I just wanna talk to other people about it because I am so shy.
mm,
And I was working retail, so I didn't know anyone that liked the show or that was into anything that I am. And I'm an
yeah.
all or nothing kind of person, obsessive, clearly. Hello.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe if I put up some videos, I might click with some people.
Mm,
And to this day, still, like I don't think when I'm recording or when I'm uploading that like anyone's gonna watch it. And I'm like, well, yeah, no one's gonna see it. It'll be fine. It'll be
mm,
fine. And I try not to pay attention to like anything like that because I probably wouldn't do it if I did.
mm.
So
Or
it,
just
it it's
the thought of
weird.
who's out there.
Yeah, yeah. That's
I never see them timely, but I'll search it out. I think I'm sure I'm subscribed to you, and so they show up. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But they're with you, and I know it's time consuming. So I appreciate all the work you've done.
Thank you. I mean, like I said, it did begin because of the love of the show, and then like over the years, I've gotten so invested in like filmmaking or the making of shows. Like I love behind the scenes, how it's made, talking to people directly about like experiences. Like, okay, it was cool on screen, but what was like behind the scenes? And yeah, I think over the years as well, I have just got such an appreciation for because since I started doing these interviews, I've talked to people like directors, costume designers, like the most intricate, you learn the most intricate little moments that go into making shows. And it's like,
Yeah.
but staying on the topic of fear, I guess, I mean, John Dory he was such a loved character. He really was. There was just,
Yeah.
I don't know, there was always like this light to him and he was just fucking cool. He just was.
Yeah, he was a great character, one of the best characters I was ever given.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, with Fear as well had this format of it did kind of reinvent itself season after season, aesthetically, tonally, and John was definitely that. I mean, he came on the scene just so out of time and place almost. Um,
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it's an odd thing that this person decided to do. This former cop who's like,
yeah.
well, it's the apocalypse now. I guess I'll cosplay as a cowboy for the rest of the. I mean, it's weird, if you think about it, but it's certainly probably the best intro to a character I've ever had. That first episode of 4, I think it was.
Mm.
No, yeah, was it? Wherever, whatever John's intro episode was, where he's sitting by the fire and talking to Morgan or just
Yeah.
talking to the woods. That was the first time we met John.
And what was the audition process then like that for and getting the call first day on set at the beginning?
Oh, this was one of those. I was doing a show called Hand of God for Amazon before, which is maybe my favorite character I've ever played. Uh, and Scott had called to talk to me about the possibility of Negan. Uh, Not saying he was offering me that part, but I think I was a person he was interested in. But there was no way we could work it out time wise, because of the show I was doing. It just, I believe Negan was introduced at the end of a certain season.
Season 6.
He didn't see him till the end, and then he kind of
Yeah.
really came in at the end, and I was still doing my show, and I could have done season 7, started then, but I couldn't have done this intro at the end of 6, which was problematic. And that began a relationship. We enjoyed talking to each other on the phone, and so I'm assuming that then he just was keeping me in mind for other possibilities, and then they created John Dory, which was nice. And it was later when I was done with Hand of God and we could do it. So yeah, there was a moment that I might have been Negan, which is kind of hard to conceive of it now after Jeffrey's made such a mark.
I mean,
But
but so is John Dory, and if you'd done Negan, we wouldn't have had John.
Yeah, who knows, but that so then I just went to Scott's place and met him and Andrew and Ian, and they talked about their plans for the character and what I expressed. In these kinds of shows, sometimes it's problematic that there's so many people. Some people are fine with that. Some people, like me, like to have more to do. I like to be busy, like you said. I don't like to sit around. I don't like to wait. And I'm fortunate to have options that will fulfill those wishes. So I expressed my interests, and they made a lot of assurances, or what their plans were, and they aligned up, and so I took it. And you have to be a little forgiving. It's a hard thing to run a show. It's a very hard thing to make a show work. It's hard to make a bad show, let alone a great show. And so I think a lot of those initial hopes they had for how the show was going to play out had to change for some reason or another. And that might have led to some dissatisfaction on my part, or differences in sort of the artistic future of the thing. And I had other things I wanted to do as well. My own show Sprung I could produce and be in. And so it gets tricky. There's lots of personalities, and there's lots of different things to go. But I might be jumping ahead in your interview here, but I really genuinely like everybody there. That's I think the greatest skill that the people running the whole Walking Dead franchise have is the people they can attract in front of and behind the camera. I think are just extraordinary, really talented, really kind. Andrew and Ian are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet, and I love Scott. I think Scott's a really good dude, and I know that they work their asses off to make a show as good as they can. So I miss the people. I missed them very much, but it was time for me to go, and I browbeat them into letting me go. So it's my fault. Blame me, and I'm sorry.
But his last episode, John's last episode.
That,
Oh,
I mean, they decided how he was going to go for sure.
and what were your initial thoughts about that, especially learning that you'd be walkified?
Well, I was first just, really thrilled that I was being allowed, because there was a gift they were giving me, to go do the things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm also, I'm not a kid anymore. I don't feel like I have time to just kind of chafe and, stew about things I haven't gotten to do, or, things that have changed. But, it would be foolish of me also not to say, like, I'm sure they had a similar conversation, say, with Jenna, and told her what her story arc was going to be, which was heavily, which I would have been heavily involved in.
Mm.
So I struggle with a lot of feelings of selfishness, about how much uh, I changed her experience on this show. She's a pro. She's really a great scene partner, and I had a great time with her. But I feel like I was a little myopic in my own, you know, looking out for myself, and I wish it could have been somehow smoother or pre-planned, maybe, a shorter duration. They let me out of my contract, um, a few seasons, which was amazing. But I think she handled it with aplomb, and you know, she's one of the greatest team players I think you'll ever meet, and everyone loved working with her. Those directors and those producers, and I think she did a great job with the way her story evolved.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, John and June as a couple, gorgeous, gorgeous coupling. But individually as well, like my God, her character arc went just
Yeah.
took off. You know what I mean? It really did. Um, but one of my favorite moments, probably one of my favorite moments, of Mr. Dory's was the splitting of the bullet scene.
No,
That's something I'd never heard of ever
I
before.
know. I
Uh,
looked it up on YouTube and it's been done.
yeah,
But
same, because I
yeah,
didn't believe it
I
was
was like,
real.
"Hmm, okay."
But for you, what's one of your favorite moments that you got to shoot on set or a scene that you were a part of from
I had
Fear?
a lot of fun. I think my favorite episode I was in, and it's a toss up between a couple, but I think my favorite episode was The Key, where I'm working for Ginny, but it's something's up, and it's the beginning of John's. You know, he's rotting from it. I mean, his teeth are coming out. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But I thought that was uh, just a very successful, well done episode from top to bottom, and I felt like we elevated some things. And Laura was another one. You know, um, Michael Satrazemis directed that one. Where I meet June, and
Mm.
that just seemed like when I saw there was a similar episode on Last of Us with Nick Offerman. This sort of standalone story.
Oh, yeah,
You
Bill
know,
and Frank.
you know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah,
it reminded me a lot of Laura in a lot of ways. Um, yeah, and it's also nice to see a zombie show winning awards. There's some great work that happened in the Walking Dead universe, and I don't think anyone ever felt like it would be respected or liked by our own community in a way, and it's kind of nice to see that that's changing.
for sure. Fans have been saying it for years. For years. I mean,
Yeah,
about the main show, Walking Dead, Fear, obviously, The Ones Who Live, which is the new Rick and Michonne show. I mean, people have been saying it for ages. I think it's just some kind of, I don't know, stigma that the award shows have against horror in general as a genre, uh,
sure.
in regards to TV for some reason. And it's like, let's just hope that that changes because there is so much amazing content like that out there. Um, but yeah, then with films, I mean, John as a character, he had a big arc, but he was generally quite positive, more on the upbeat side of things. And then in regards to films, I mean, No Country for Old Men, 12 Years a Slave, um, Widows as well, which was, oh fuck, I loved that film. And last night, actually, I rewatched Last House on the Left.
Mm.
I haven't seen that film in years. And I popped it on last night and thought it'd be a good thriller. I think I remember liking this. Oh, that is some dark, dark shit.
Yeah, it's pretty dark.
How do you detangle yourself from something like that after a working day?
Well, I've never been one of those guys that brings it home. I mean, my wife might argue with that, but it, consciously anyway, I don't feel like I bring it home. And we laughed a lot on that set. Probably. I mean, Martha McIsaac, was from oh shoot, what was that hilarious movie she was in uh, with Emma Stone early on? Anyway,
It's not
I'm
easy,
blanking.
is it?
No, it's an incredible comedy. Uh, uh, anyway, I'm blowing that. I just was reading about it the other day, and but she's in that. Aaron Paul. A lot of people with a lot of Ricky Lindholm is hilarious. So there's a lot of people with great senses of humor on the show, and I don't know if it's because everything was so heavy and dark, or
Mm.
but there was just a lot of laughing. After the take, a lot of hanging out. We shot that in South Africa, amazingly. There's a stand of ponderosa pines that Cecil Rhodes planted at one time there to be some sort of source of lumber, I guess, for the area. Not realizing that each tree needs like, you know, 300 gallons of water a day or something. So it was not feasible. And so now it's this weird, like, nature preserve, but it looks like the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
So we were in this amazing location, you know, uh, this great South African crew, and I think a really talented director named Dennis Iliadis, who's Greek. Um, and I don't know why he doesn't work more, because he makes everything better than it should be. Um, so we kind of had a great time, and Sarah Passion was so game. I'd worked with her before on a couple things, and she was always like, stop being gentle with me. You're not going to hurt me. You're not going to, this needs to be this way. So it was, it wasn't as hard as you might think,
Mm.
but
I mean, I imagine it's much easier than, like you said, when there's that trust between actors and between people on the set. Um,
yeah,
I just mean getting into that mindset. I mean, the whole film, and you have a few roles like that, that the characters, it's like, I can't imagine having to get in and walk around that person, you know what I mean? And then try and hang them up when you're done and be like, rid of
yeah,
it.
yeah, and maybe stuff. I mean, I was joking with a friend recently, like, do I have a pervert face or something? How come I keep getting this, you know, do I look like a pervert? I never get like the kind. I mean, John Dory, Bert Chan. I played Jesus Christ, for goodness sake, once. Blue-eyed, blue-eyed white Jesus. So I played plenty, just as many sweethearts as I have bad guys, but people always remember the bad guys. But I
Mm.
think, I just try to I just try to play the character. I'm one of those that I wanted to be a writer, so I have a lot of respect for writing, and I just feel like my job is to, you know, bring what's on the page to life as believably as I can. And I don't know, that gives me some kind of permission to be as evil as the story requires, you know, because the story requires it.
I wouldn't call it a pervert face. I think that's just you being mean to yourself. I would say it takes
I'll
very
just try to
particular,
explain.
it
Yeah.
takes a particular kind of person to be able to like embody that kind of energy, you know what I'm saying? And you do so well. Um,
I like conflicted people. I think that's why I liked KD so much in Hand of God, was he was he's a skinhead. He was a ex-con skinhead who'd done some horrible, horrible things in his life, and he was trying to, and he found religion in the joint. And he's just like this close to being a decent dude, but then he goes,
and
then
does something else.
you're too far zealot wise. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're like, buddy, you were so close, and now you're just this really rageaholic, you know, zealot.
But more recently then, you got to work with Michael Bay on Ambulance.
That's
What
right.
what was that experience like? That's a big tone change from some of the more recent ones you've
Yeah,
done.
yeah. Most of my films, and actually, I guess even that one, are technically indie films. No Country is even an indie, or Jesse James.
Mm.
One of my favorite movies of all time. Um, but I was excited for that experience. He's a force of nature. That one. He's just uh, he's so. I think he's from the same school and maybe even class as Zack Snyder. You know, and it's interesting to watch them, but having worked with both of them now, to watch them both work. They both operate their own. They both have their own sort of specifically designed camera for their needs. You know,
Mm.
um, what surprised me about him was how sort of collaborative in a way Michael was, and I don't know that many people describe him that way. You always hear these stories about him being kind of dictatorial, and I can kind of see how you might interpret that energy that way, because there's so much going on. There were so many cameras on Ambulance, drones flying through the air, and you know, cameras almost getting blown up by some giant car crash, but he gets so excited by it. There's one scene where we've got to block off, like we've got them surrounded. They're going to be coming this way. Everybody get ready. It's this ambush. And he's like, I don't like this. I don't like what you're saying. And we sat on the curb and wrote this new monologue. And my heart was pounding a little bit because I was like, oh, we're set up. We're ready to go. And we're writing this right now. And then we're going to shoot. And it's going to be me talking to, 100 people. And the giant stunt is going to happen after it. We can only do it once.
You can't
And I'm
fuck
like,
up.
I've got to know this, and so I like that kind of challenge. You know what I mean? I like the look on a director's face when you pull that off, because then they start throwing more stuff at you know.
Mm. More and more trust is given.
Yeah, they're like he can take it, and a lot of people struggle, I think, with Michael, but I don't know. I mean, it's different than working with the Coen brothers, maybe, but it was a different kind of high energy challenge that I also enjoyed. You know, I'd work with him anytime, and he made me look good. I looked like Josh Duhamel in that movie. I was like, hey,
Yeah,
he always
badass
makes
fuck.
he wants everybody to be tan.
Yeah.
It's
It's
funny.
it was gorgeous to watch, and like true Michael Bay style, like you said, all the drones and the explosions and the moving super fast. Um, but then more recently, actually, I only watched this one last week, I think, in and around Red Right Hand.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I mean, kind of similar in a way, I guess, to John, but completely different at the same time. You have this reformed preacher, self-proclaimed Old Testament,
Right,
eye for eye, tooth for tooth kind
right.
of guy. Um, but a scene that I really liked in that, and like it had a lot of really good action scenes and fight sequences, but I always kind of tend to gravitate towards the more intimate, up close scenes.
Mm.
There's a scene with you and Cash, is that his name? Orlando's character, where you're in
Hmm.
the hospital and
Hmm.
you pray together.
Right,
And I
right.
just thought it was so, I mean, like I said, this movie is it's crazy. It's high action, there's a lot of fighting. Um, but it's just the shot. I think it's because you can see both of your hands, the scarring, and it's this completely disconnected moment. But for you, like with those really up close scenes that are very dialogue driven, I mean, the camera's up in your face. How do you prepare for scenes or moments like that, either alone or with your scene partner?
Uh, it's not really any different. I don't really worry about what the camera's doing. If I'm immersed as I'm supposed to be, then they can be whoever they want.
Mm.
Um, I remember I was friends with Philip Seymour Hoffman as a young man, and I remember one time telling him, because I was just beginning to do camera work, and I said, I'm really liking. I always want to know what the frame is, so that I know what I have to fill. Like, what are you? Are you right here? Are you here?
Mm.
And I said, I really enjoyed that. And he was like, no, 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 dude. They need to come to you. You need to do what you're going to do and let them decide, how to film that, And I didn't understand that. And I thought at the time, like, well, maybe you can do that, but I think they're going to do a tight, a wide and a mid, and
Mm.
over the shoulder. You know what I mean? I feel like I've got to go through the normal, but I kind of understood later what he meant, which was mainly just like stop altering your performance to the size of the thing. I think a lot of actors make that mistake and they play to their own microphone. Sometimes I can't even hear a scene partner because I know all they're thinking is it'll sound really cool if I just talk like this, even though you're addressing a giant multitude of people.
Yeah.
But my voice is cooler when I do this. And I'm just like, I'm just gonna wait till your mouth stops moving because I guess that's gonna be my cue. But I can't hear you, and don't you want this interaction? I think it might help, but so
Yeah.
that's kind of I didn't remember how they were shooting that scene. My job was to think about the fact that he kind of misunderstands what I'm saying,
Yeah.
You know, I'm not giving him permission to go kill a bunch of people, but then I don't protest, and I also, you know, I don't think he's a great preacher yet. You know, that's the only way I couldn't make it not a commercial for, you know, God endorsed
Mm.
violence.
Yeah.
But I
No.
really like the Nelms brothers. I think they're cool, and I hope we have some plans to work together again. And I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that'd be great. Because
Yeah,
like I liked I don't know, I with films I tend to kind of gravitate towards ones that are more balanced. That you do have action scenes, but you do have a lot of the kind of emotional, heavy
yeah,
driven dialogue moments or whatever. But the fight scene in this, the last fight scene in front of the house where you drive up and you've your man sellotaped to the front of the car. Um,
right.
that scene was crazy, man. And like with chaotic moments like that, I imagine it's kind of hard to keep in the because like you said, if one thing goes wrong, then it throws the whole flow of everyone else off. So is it hard to keep in the mindset when you've so many different moving pieces in a scene?
I don't know. It's kind of the fun part of what we do. You know, I mean, in a small way, you produce a show very frequently. You know, and you know how all the moving pieces of that are just with you, or maybe you and a cameraman or something, or um, and I think that's kind of the magic about this business. You know, which look, it's a silly business in a lot of ways, isn't it? We're just playing pretend, but it's also kind of miraculous that all these people, you know, trying to make the same thing.
Mm.
It's kind of miraculous when it all works, you know, so many moving pieces, so many people, you know, and it's the best uh, when everybody's focused and everybody's engaged creatively, and you know, that's kind of where happy accidents can happen, you know, in that particular scene. You know, and I love action stuff. I've been fortunate, you know, I'm kind of athletic, and I've always enjoyed fight scenes and, you know, shooting guns and running around and diving off of cliffs or whatever. And you know, we got to do so much fun stuff like that on Fear. It was one of the greatest parts of it. You know, just sometimes I'm like, this is my job. I'm riding a horse through a river, you know, with a Winchester on my back, and I mean, it's like ridiculous fun. Like, who gets to do that? You know, and it keeps me young, and you know, it's just it's a like in Shakespeare in Love. Remember when Jeffrey Rush was like, you know, like it's a mess, and but it's going to work. He's like, why? I don't know. It just
Yeah.
always does. You know, it's just it's a wonderful feeling.
I mean, I guess when you're all so talented and you're also tuned into each other, it would work. I'd imagine it would be so difficult with such a big scene or big moments like that, you know, to try and keep in pace with each other. If one person falls out of line or falls off time or physically falls over, if you're doing a fight scene, it kind of shags the whole
Right.
rest of it, you know?
Well,
Um,
there's so many pieces, so many cuts. You know, it's very seldom like a long giant one. That sometimes there are, which are insane. Like maybe on Extraction, the Extraction movies, some of those fight scenes are. I can't. Like I'm trying to find the cuts, and I can't find any. And I'm just like, this. How long did this take to film?
yeah.
But most of the time, action's quite slow. So it's the bigger challenges, just keeping focused, remembering where you were mentally and emotionally, because you're going to cut a lot and you're going to put all the pieces in. Okay, now we're going to do it again with the blank. Now you're close together, so you can't actually have the blank. We'll cut right before you shoot. Then we'll cut to the other one and load the thing. And okay, now we've got the windows wired to blow. You know, so it's actually in a way sometimes it's kind of tedious. You know, but the bigger challenge is staying focused and keeping your energy up.
What fight scene for you or high energy scene like that? I know there's scenes that look cool, but I mean like you said, either a fight scene or a action sequence that you've been a part of was your favorite to film, just because of how it translated to screen afterwards. You thought, ah, yes, I did it.
I don't know. Favorite's hard for me. I feel like my favorite anything changes week to week.
Mm.
But the first thing that popped into my head was water work and stuff. I did on Terminator. I had a scene where I got dragged to the bottom of a tank, and I'm wondering if I could do it now. You know, because I was like, cool back then. You know, and like the water work in John's last episode was so much fun. You know, you part of it you film in an actual river, and part of it in like a pool that's got rocks and stuff decorating the bottom, so they can control the environment a little more. Or make it deep enough. The river wasn't actually that deep. But I think the water work is very challenging and fun to me. I've done a few movies where we had to do a lot of water stuff, and it's just it's so easy that you don't even have to act. You're like, I'm underwater. I'm underwater with an air hose, waiting for action, you know, and to keep your mind calm, so you can actually then perform a scene underwater. We had a blood bag in John's coat, and it was kind of malfunctioning sometimes, and they'd be trying to get it to ooze before you swim up or something. It's just fun. I love stunt teams. A lot of my best friends are stunt people, and I've had one stunt double for about 10 years now. I try to take him wherever I go. Jeff Groff is his name. He's great. It's a good double for me, and great driver. He's mainly a driving guy, but yeah, it's all fun. It's hard to narrow down.
I
And I
wouldn't
like the
touch
shooting
water.
stuff. You what?
I wouldn't touch water. Any scene, anything.
Oh yeah,
I'm terrified of water. God, no.
it's
How about that?
fun. There's divers all around you. You know,
Yeah.
the funny thing, like on the Terminator one, I'm wearing cowboy boots, and I'm like, an Arnold Schwarzenegger style. So I'm heavy. I'm metal. I'm a metal man chasing John Connor. He jumps off Santa Monica Pier into the water, and I just walk off after him and try to grab him, and I miss him, and I'm so heavy I sink straight to the bottom of the ocean, and then I just kind of walk out of the ocean. But to film that scene, so we jump off Santa Monica Pier, and then we go to a tank where we do the actual thing. But with the cowboy boots I'm wearing, there was always this air pocket, and I would jump in, and my feet would kind of flip me upside down, and we could
Oh,
never. So we tried pre-filling them with water, still didn't work. So then they tied a rope around my ankle, ran it down to the bottom of the tank through a little eyelet, with a diver on the other end who would swim as hard as he could to pull me down. So I'm just looking up like, and then I wait there, just holding my breath for the safety divers to come in and pull me up. And I was thinking, I loved it at the time. I was like, this is so cool. But I'm like, I wonder if I could do that now. I'm tied up at the bottom of a tank of water. And I was like, what should I do? And they're like, hold your arms out so we can just come grab your arms. And I remember seeing there was one guy who preferred not to have the diving gear on because he felt he got to me faster. And he was just this big white, blob in a swimsuit. And I could see him just like coming for me, like mad, just like swimming, like
like
as hard
Jaws coming out of the ocean.
and he grabs me, and another diver grabs me, and they start pulling me up. And it was a great day. It was just a wonderful, I was like, I'm swimming. I'm in a swimming pool, a giant tank all day long.
Oh, fair play
And
to you. You must just be built different. That sounds like hell to me. Oh God, no, I'd be like, you know
like
what?
I say, I wonder if I'd be as calm now. I don't know, because then you feel like you're invincible.
True, yeah. Touching back on Red Right Hand, the trailer for The Dead Don't Hurt came out yesterday, I think it was, yesterday or the day
Yeah,
before,
yeah,
where you're working with Viggo Mortensen. Are you just making your way through the fellowship?
that's true. Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny. I didn't think about that.
The trailer
We
looks
worked.
fantastic.
It does. I haven't gotten to see it yet. I was, Tiff. I think COVID was still going on. I believe so. Hardly anyone got to go. I think him and Vicky went. Vicky Krebs. I don't know if you know who Vicky Krebs is, but if you saw Phantom Thread, you do, with Danny Day-Lewis. But she's marvelous. She's luminous. Is she French, I think, or German? I can't remember. But she's one of those actors who can, you know, she actually seems to feel everything. I mean, she can be embarrassed on cue. It's just crazy. She's how good
Mm,
she is. And I'd worked with Viggo before on The Road,
yeah.
another Cormac McCarthy adaptation, and we'd become friendly then. He's very lonery as well, so it was like two semi-shy dudes trying to have a conversation was tricky. but we liked each other, and I was very happy he called, see if I wanted to do this, and we shot it in Mexico a summer ago, maybe two. The same summer I did Million Miles Away in Mexico, and yeah, we're a lot alike, and that sounds like I'm being very self-flattering. I just mean the way we work is very similar, and you know, it's more technical than you might think, you know, and then he's able to turn on his kind of genius, you know, inhabiting of the character that he does. But I'm excited to see it. I think the trailer looks great too, and shot beautifully. I think he even composed the score. I mean, he did everything on this movie.
Some quick fire questions for you, and then I'll let you go because I've kept you long enough.
Been fun.
You're gonna hate these questions because they're kind of either or what's your favorite? So prepare.
Okay, brace myself.
Yeah. So do you prefer living in a role for longer with a TV show or getting in and out and being done with a film role?
Terrible. That's a terrible choice.
Terrible question. I know.
Because I don't feel like that's the first thought about a film. So, but if these are my choices, then I'll say living longer on a television thing then.
So what's your first thoughts on film?
Well, I mean, I don't think it matters about getting out quick. You know, that's not my motivation for doing a film or not. Is like, you know, I want to be involved. I want to be there. You know, when people call and say, you know, would you do me a favor? And, you know, I want you to be in this movie. And I'm like, I'm thinking this is going to be fantastic. You know, I want to be there every day. I want a lot to do. I want a lot of responsibility. And then it'll be like, we'll get you in and out in a day, you know, and it's some horrible little part. And I'm like, that's not a favor. You know, this is the favor you want to call in. You know, if you want me to do you a favor, you know, write me something great and say I can't pay you. You know, then we have a dilemma. You know,
Yeah.
this is like, oh no, how do I say no without hurting your feelings because I have better options than this? You know.
Right.
So in your choice, I'm going to pick the long development of a TV show.
Right. I think it's just the way I phrase it. I meant like that you can tell a whole story, a whole arc shorter
Yeah,
usually for a film as opposed to a TV show.
yeah. I mean, you have to. It's a 2 hour thing. Yeah.
Yeah, true. And I guess filming constraints as well. What's been your favorite costume you've put on for a role? You can only pick one.
Favorite car?
Mm,
Francis Wolcott in Deadwood.
really?
Yeah,
Why?
I'd never worn a tie before. Stupid, sounds stupid. I don't come from a money. My father's a trucker. You know, I'm in a farming community, and I for some reason thought no one will ever believe me as anything but a blue collar person. You know, and Janie Bryant, who's one of the greatest costume designers ever, she also did Mad Men. She was the designer on Deadwood, and she put me in a suit in Wolcott's outfit, which was like 2 sizes too small, because she's like, you can get into it and you'll look great. And I was like, yeah, this is so uncomfortable. It was just like it was like a size 40, and I'm like 42 long, you know. It was too small. Maybe it was so tight. But she was right. It looked amazing. It did something to my posture, and I found myself comfortable playing a rich man, you know, and it changed me in a lot of ways in terms of opening up other roles for me. I was like, oh, idiot, you can play whatever. You know, you don't have to actually be the thing.
It's
So,
interesting that you
well,
say that it made you walk or stand differently because I know costumes can do that. They can completely
yeah,
alter how
yeah.
you portray the role.
Like my shoes for John Dory were so uncomfortable. Like a lot of times I was in so much pain as John Dory, but she liked the way the shoes looked, and you know, I'm not saying it hastened my exit, but it didn't help. I was like,
The
I don't
shoes.
think my body could take much more of this. Yeah, the shoes, they were pinchy, and like, and because we're outside all day, we're in the elements. You know, it's a
Yeah.
very rigorous show physically on everybody. Kim Dickens told me, she's like, oh, I don't think I'll ever recover from fear physically. It's hard. It's hard work, and you need comfy shoes.
And you didn't have that.
I did not have that.
You should have done the trick where you put water in them You put water in them and then you put them in the freezer so it like expands the inside of them to make them a bit comfier.
Maybe we tried everything. I just take them off and put on some comfy shoes of my own if they're not on camera. So
Mm.
John Dory is, Holka's on when he's not on camera.
You're just like, don't pan down, please, Jesus.
Yeah, please don't look down.
Um, what has been one of the favorite lines that you've delivered? Favorite lines of dialogue you've had?
It's going to be really tough to top David Milch. So yeah, I think maybe the past surprise monologue from Wolcott as well when he's about to go to the Chez Ami and do some murdering is a pretty amazing piece of dialogue. I mean, that guy's insane. If you haven't read his book, it's called Life's Work.
Mm-hmm.
David's battling dementia now. It often seems to attack geniuses. I don't know why, but he got it down before he was completely, savaged by this thing. And it's an amazing read, and you learn a lot about Deadwood and all his other projects and writing in general, and being an artist. It's a very inspiring read.
Mm.
But so I'm sorry that two of my answers have been Wolcott and Deadwood.
No, not at all. It's true what you said, though. So often it's the greatest minds and the most creative minds.
It's weird, right?
Yeah, it is.
So
Um,
I'm probably safe.
you're so fucking mean to yourself, man. You really are. And that's coming from someone who makes self-deprecation her whole brand. What's one of the craziest things that you've done for a role? It could be shaving your head, could be standing outside for 12 hours and horrible elements.
I don't know. The water stuff is challenging.
Mm.
There was a play I really wanted to do. My friend Tim Blake Nelson, who's a great actor himself, works with the Coen brothers a lot, wrote a play called Eye of God. And this would end up being my first lead role where I realized, oh, I could carry a thing. I didn't think I could, but I remember getting ready for that audition, and I lived on a old passenger ferry at the time in New York City. Part of the rent was we had to work on the boat like 2 days a week because it was just a shell. Like I lived in a plywood room, and down in the engine room was all this grease and parts. And I remember sticking my hands into this bucket of black sludge to make my hands look, to get that thing under all your nails and
Yeah, yeah.
so that when I went in, it's kind of the most I don't know, costumey thing I'd ever done for an audition, but it just made me feel right. And it was probably the best audition I've ever given in my life. I knew this was mine. Incidentally, a very violent guy who finds religion in a joint and marries his pen pal bride, and it goes way south. It's an American tragedy, basically, he wrote. But I don't know, that's not really that crazy, but that's the first thing that popped into my head.
I'm sorry, I can't get past. You lived on a ferry?
Yeah, an old passenger ferry that used to take, people to Ellis Island or Rock Island. And this
Oh,
guy
yeah.
bought it and rented out some rooms in it. And me and my friend at the time rented a room and worked on that boat.
That's fucking awesome.
It was awesome. It was we'd sleep on the top sometimes, and you could see like the towers, were still there, and they're so tall they kind of make their own atmosphere. There's these clouds coming off of them. We'd be on the deck, just like
Oh my God.
quiet. We can see all of New York City, and it was like we live in like this quiet, gently rocking, gigantic boat in New York City with a bunch of other guys.
That sounds
It
gorgeous.
was kind of fun,
I've been to New York a
except
good few
the
times.
storms were terrible. Nor'easters were not fun.
Oh, nice. You're probably vomiting over the side. I've been to New York a few times because I have family there, and yeah, I can't say that still and peaceful is something that I ever experienced there. I love
I
New
know.
York. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous, but never had a nice peaceful moment where I could look up at the clouds. It was more like go, go, go.
Yeah. Keep going.
Beautiful city though. What's the proudest you've been of a project that you've done? That if you could pick one piece of work to represent yourself, what would it be?
how fortunate am I that that's a hard question to answer?
Right?
First of all, because there's a few things that sprang to mind, and I'm like, oh no, which one? Because I certainly have. I mean, Deadwood gave me a career, and probably influences everything I do. I try to make everything into that kind of show. Jesse James was just a marvelous creative experience. But the first thing I thought of was Sprung, the show that I left Fear to do. It's the first thing I ever produced. And while we only got one season, it was a massive success. And I think if it was any other time than a streaming time in which subscribers are the profit, meter,
Yeah.
there's very little impetus for anyone to do more than one season because they feel you've brought in the subscribers you're going to bring in, and thank you very much. Now you're just an expense for us, so we're going to go. But we made a really good show that made people feel good after a really dark few years of COVID and lockdown. It made people laugh, and it was reviewed well and kind of beloved by everybody. And it was a really great, difficult experience. And I just felt like I graduated to a different place of understanding in this business on that show. So Sprung on Amazon if you want to watch it.
And it does, you're absolutely right as well. The time that it came along, it was so needed. That little bit of light, that little bit of,
Just
I don't
taking the
know.
piss out of us all, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was so fucking needed. And I remember thinking that when I watched it, I was like, thank fuck, because it does feel like things can be so dark and so, oh, all the time.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but like you said, with streaming and with how shows are nowadays, it feels so hard to try and get attached to like any new project. Because if the season one of a show comes out, you're like, I loved this. And then
yeah,
well, it's
that's
probably
it.
gonna be it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy
Tough.
time.
It's very
It's
tough.
very weird in the business right now. It's very scary. Still probably 60% of crews aren't back to work yet. There's just it's a very slow healing process after the strike and everything else. So
Hmm.
everyone's trying to figure their way. I think studios are trying to rejigger how they do things. Trying to find a way for everybody to make a living in this thing. I talk to students a lot. I'm asked to, and I have a harder time than I used to recommending this as a profession. It's different. It's just different. People have an idea about it that's not true.
Hmm.
You don't. If your goal is to make a lot of money, there's a lot easier ways to do it than this business. I think the only reason to do this is that you love it, and you can not conceive of any other life than telling stories. I think that's the only way you'll be happy doing this.
It's a lovely answer, and it's a lovely segue into the last question that I think you might have already just answered.
Ah,
It was if you could go back to when you started your career
mhm.
and give yourself a piece of advice, would you, or would you let everything play out exactly as it did?
No, I think I definitely would. As together as I might have appeared on this interview, uh, it's taken an awfully long time. And I think for a long time I never felt like I belonged or had the right. And I think I would tell a younger person is it's a confusing piece of advice because it doesn't mean you stop learning or training or working hard. But I would say to myself, uh, you deserve it now. You can do this now. There's not a ladder. Uh,
Mm.
I think I thought you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and then I would see people go like, "I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that right now," and I'm like, "Wait, you can't. Are you
You're
allowed to
skipping
do that?
steps.
Are you allowed to? I didn't think that's allowed. But it makes look if it's a 19-year-old whatever in the thing, how much experience can you have? You know, whoever they cast is not going to have a ton. And boom, you're Timothy Chalamet or whoever. And I wasted a lot of time. I started late too, which I can't change. I didn't get interested in this till my last year of college, and then I went to grad school, and so I didn't set foot in front of a camera till I was in my 30s. Um, so I've done a lot in feels like a fairly short amount of time, but I wish I would have felt like, you deserve to be in the room, today. We're just playing pretend.
It's absolutely lovely to get to talk to you as well. And I know you're a busy person,
Not
but
that big.
man, you've been a part of a lot of projects I've loved, but John Dory was so near and dear to me.
Well, that
And
makes me happy.
yeah, I thank you so much for putting in the love, the blood, sweat, and tears, and the energy into that, and for taking the time to sit, because this is my kind of thing. Interviewing is what I want to do.
Yeah, well, you're
You know?
good at it. I really enjoyed this, and I wish you continued success. And thank you for letting me come on.
And that is it for this video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, thanks a million to Garret for talking and sharing his time. Time is like, one of the most precious resources that you have as a person. So I really do appreciate that he take an hour out of his day to sit and discuss all things film, TV, acting. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, these are my favourite style of video to do. So every time I am lucky enough to have another opportunity to talk to somebody who's a part of a project that I loved so much, the weight of it is not lost on me. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you all soon.